Hey Brea, I want to talk about the nervous system today and in a different capacity. This came up recently. I was editing a podcast and I was like, okay, how should a yoga teacher think about the nervous system when teaching actual humans in actual classes? Because I feel right now the idea of nervous system is in the zeitgeist. We're all into nervous system resets. And are we even talking about it correctly in class as a teacher? So, my first question for you is when we say a class is nervous system supportive, what do we actually mean beyond this is slow or this is calm, which I think is what people equate it to. They think nervous system and they think everything should be chill and calm.
Great question, my dear Ula. Yeah. I wonder. That one's tricky because there's a couple layers immediately. I think about like, well, marketing. Like, I think we when we use the word nervous system in the main, as you said, the zeitgeist, we are generally talking about stress levels.
Hmm.
And when we're stressed, our nervous system's stressed. And so we want to offer yoga classes that are going to help people de-stress, which will generally be, like you said, slow, lying around on bolsters, gentle breathing, relaxing. But in reality, the nervous system is our interface to the world. We're always a nervous system. And we always need to support it in so many different ways. So if you want to be more pedantic, you could say all of your classes are nervous system focused. But let's not be pedantic. Let's be sort of like acknowledging the world that we're in, that we need to name classes so that people actually come to them. We got to use the words that the people that would come to our classes are familiar with in the context that they're familiar with. So first, yeah. So I think no matter what you're teaching nervous systems,
Mm.
because a nervous system is your proprioception. Your nervous system is also your interoception. So proprioception is knowing where you are in space. The interoception is being able to sense yourself from within, being able to read the signals that your digestive system is saying, or like, right. So, and interoception is the ability to understand and sense yourself from within, like sensing, oh, I'm hungry. Or on another layer, to me, I feel like it's like your intuition. You're able to sense what you can't see, the stuff inside of you. You can't see what's inside of you, but you can sense what your heart beating. That's interoception. And that's always happening, whether you're in a yoga class or not. And so as yoga teachers, then we think maybe also then the social nervous system, where, okay, what's the environment of my class? What does it feel like when people come into my classes? How do my cues land, the words that I use land in people's bodies so that they're not in nervous system fight or flight still, or
Mhm.
fawn or freeze? Because these are some of the responses that a nervous system can do when we're in stressful situations. And that can show up in a yoga class. If we're in a super fast paced class and we're not really ready for it, and the teacher's like, haven't we all been in these classes where it's like, we're trying to go through this fast vinyasa flow, and the teacher is also cueing the breath at the same time. And you're like, my breath is not, I can't keep up to this. But the teacher is not explaining that it's okay that you don't have to keep up to the cued breath. And so the nervous system in that moment is freaking out. So I just kind of went through a whole bunch of different to me things, but yeah, it's complex.
I actually really like a kind of like sometimes rigid breath to movement practice as long as it's paced at a reasonable amount. Um, but as you were speaking, I was thinking about some even guided meditations I personally cannot do. And I've seen it also in studios where there's breath holding. And for me, that actually triggers quite a bit of anxiety when someone's telling me how long I should inhale, how long I should wait, how long I should exit. Like that is panic inducing in me. And when you are going through a training, I don't know how often people talk about the possibility that what you think is calming for you might actually be causing anxiety and the opposite reaction in your students. So yeah, the breathing thing is quite I feel like I connect with.
I think you make a good point that I think reflects this as well of, so then sure, you've got, so teachers, we're teaching a class of however many students, and what's going to happen, because a teacher is going to hear you say that and be like, oh crap, well, I teach that in my classes all the time. Uh-oh.
Mm.
And so I wanted to show the nuances of teaching where it's like, okay, you're going to have somebody like Ula in the class who's like, this is not good. This is not relaxing for me. I need something different. But somebody right beside Ula is probably like, yes, tell me how to breathe. I love this. I could do, and so it's like, what do you do in these scenarios not if, when you have 2 different people, 5 different people, 20 different people who may or may not like these so-called nervous system supportive things. And so it really, again, comes back to the social nervous system of the class, which is really the vibe of the class, which is really just like offering freedom and permission for people for you as a teacher to know not everything you're going to teach is going to land for everybody. And so offering space for that and autonomy, going, okay, we're going to do this breathing. I'm going to guide us through it. If it works for you, follow along. If it doesn't work for you, you can find a different pace to do it. You can do a different breath. You can simply breathe in, breathe out. And then I would add a next layer, because I find people hear the options and that's still not nervous system supportive enough, because that person who doesn't like the breathing, let's say, might be somebody who's a perfectionist and is like, well, if I'm not doing the thing that everybody else is doing, then I'm not doing it good enough. So as a teacher, the next layer, in my opinion, is to go, here's the different options, do this and that. And none of them matter, or / all of them matter, right? Like, don't put hierarchy on your options. Like, really reinforce for people, hey, if today this breathing isn't working, do this other one. They're both really good. Mm-hmm. And then what happens in the nervous system to the person who wants to do everything really good? Okay, the so-called lesser option isn't actually that, because my teacher told, like, right. So it's important to have these really layers of awareness as a teacher to help support people's nervous system beyond lying on a bolster.
Mm-hmm. I will say I didn't want anyone to panic when I said that. Sorry. I will say, here's what goes on in my head when I do these breathing exercises, whether this helps people or not, is I actually just think of the sensation of the breathing, and I inhale until a comfortable maximum, and then I hold until it's comfortable to exhale. And I just actually focus on the sensation within my body rather than a rigid count. Because what I found in classes with rigid counting for me is sometimes it was too quick or it was too long. And I'm like, in my head, kind of like what you're talking about, I'm trying to be this like perfect student. And I'm like, like, it's like my breathing is just like all over the place. I'm like, versus an intuitive, expansive, okay, I've held it. I probably hold it longer than 4 seconds, So anyways, it's
given your own autonomy, right? Given your own permission to actually do something so that you can tune into your body, which, hey, guess what? That's yoga. So yay, right?
Yay, we learned something.
Right. I think that was a really helpful example, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about the nervous system thing too, just when we're talking about classes and breathing and movement, because the other question I had for you then is, what about kind of if you're not watching, I'm quoting intense classes, right? So does nervous system support always mean calming people down? Or can you challenge and have intensity also be a part of that?
Good question. I love this. Yeah, definitely. Because what we're trying to do, the nervous system at its baseline, your nervous system is always trying to create homeostasis, which means it's wanting you to stay balanced, whatever balanced is, right? And it's also super adaptable, and it's protecting you. And again, it's that interface between like your body, your mind, your sensory senses of the world, and your body, and that interface between. And so it's good to calm down an overactive nervous system. But as you say, it's really helpful to build capacity and resilience for a nervous system. And to do that in a nervous system sort of way, it's finding ways to do it where it's not it's giving good stress, because stress is happening all the time. It's a fact of life. Your nervous system is designed to handle these natural stressors of life. But of course, when life gets too stressful and a chronic stress, that's when the nervous system needs that sense of calming down. Right? That's another layer of that, of remembering. So yeah, a lot of us are in these chronically stressed states. So that's why breathing, relaxing, walks, all the things that when we think of nervous system, that's what we're thinking of. And then when we go into nervous system capacity building, so that we can do strong things, so that we can do hard things, so that we can be in a balanced pose, unbalanced, but not freaking out. That's just as important, because then the stuff that we do on the mat that creates that challenge and resilience and capacity for your nervous system translates into our everyday life. Translates because you're signaling in a safe space. This is what I love, love, love about the physical side of yoga, is creating a safe space for your nervous system to be uncomfortable and build resilience. And so I always, I'm sure I've said this before, but I always use balancing poses as that opportunity to learn that. It's like, okay, we're in a yoga studio. I've created a really nice supportive space for people to fall over, to wobble. We're all laughing. We're all trying. We're curious. We're exploring, standing on one leg in various ways. And what you're signaling to the nervous system is like, hey, you can be not perfect. Hey, oh, you're wobbling. Oh, and your mind goes, yeah. I'm just trying to do tree pose. No big deal. But what's happening in the nervous system, what's happening on a deeper somatic, unconscious, conscious level is some of us, our nervous systems might go, wait, this is scary, right? It's not logical, because the frontal lobe, don't quote me on if that's actually the frontal lobe, but like, your conscious brain is going, no, you've got one foot in the air, no big deal. I want to say limbic, but again, I'm kind of second guessing myself.
Your lizard brain.
The lizard brain, thank you, is going, you're going to die because you're not stable on the ground. So that's why I keep kind of coming back into that's why I'm using the word safe place of yoga, because as the teacher, as a facilitator, when we know, oh, the lizard brain's going to jump in here and go, actually, this is unsafe. I'm going to tense up. I'm going to try to fight it. What we're trying to do is offer experiences for people to go, hey, and talk to that lizard brain and go, hey, you're cool. It's cool. Look, we're falling all over the place, but we're not dying. So that's kind of having that capacity. Or I'll throw in another thing, like holding a pose for a long time. Let's say holding a chair pose, and your quadriceps are about to burst into flames because it's just so much work. It's a fine line, of course. As a teacher, personally, I don't make people hold things until they're like really, really, really going. There's always safety and support to be like, hey, come out of this at any point. But then as a teacher, as a facilitator, you can have that extra little bit of like, hey, I know if you want to get out of it, totally, but maybe let's explore our capacity. Can we go just another breath if that feels okay for you, right? So it's just that framing without being like, everybody go do this, because we've all been in those classes, we've been in those boot camps or those types of things where it's like overriding our red flags of actually, no, now this is too far.
Oh, I love the idea of like playing with capacity. It reminded me of, I remember seeing this thing and I like forever changed my thought around running hills. And it's that your brain is designed to protect you. So it's going to give you signals really early to be like, you should just probably quit. You should just stop now. Like you're why are you doing this? Is crazy. But you're usually around like 60%, 70% capacity at that point. And once I realized that, and I realized, oh, I'm actually training my capacity, and this is just as much a mental practice as it is a physical practice, I suddenly discovered I actually could keep going. And when I apply that to thinking about my experience as a student, like these, let's say, air quotes, more intense classes that were linked with breath and things like that, it actually reminded me of a past episode. We talked about teaching boring classes. And you mentioned, I think in that episode, that it's nice for our nervous system. And I agree, because I felt like I could push my capacity because nothing crazy is going to happen. I actually know what's happening in this class. Last week, I couldn't do this. Can I try again this week? And maybe physically this is difficult, but because it's difficult and I'm very present, nothing, like I feel like I can disconnect from the stress of my day and I can focus on my breathing. And this is really hard. And if it's hard and I can't do it, it's a-okay to fail at it. And so it goes back to the idea of you're saying like, it's actually just a safe space. And I love that you talked about capacity. I feel like I'm going to think about that a lot now with yoga.
Yeah. And I think that that's the whole, when we talk about the nervous system, it does default into like, I just need to lie down and stress out, or really
you're dying.
stress.
Don't do it.
Yeah. And that is always a fine line, always, because how is like, okay, so is it a day where you didn't sleep well that night and you had a super stressful day and all this stuff is going on, and then you go to the class and the teacher's like, okay, let's hold it for, in a wonderfully supportive way, but being like, okay, see if you can push the capacity a bit. And maybe that day you're like, actually, no, I'm too
Yeah.
tired. But sometimes on the flip side, those very days are the ones where you're like, oh, I was able to find something more in us. Our capacity is always this changing experience. And I think that's why having these nervous system forward classes, whether we ever use those words as the descriptor of our classes as teachers, to know that we're teaching nervous systems that are interfacing with every part of our world. So they're going to be stressed. They're going to need capacity push. They're going to not need capacity push sometimes. And that in of itself is an art to be able to be that discerning in your own body, to know when is it good to push, when is it good to not. It's an ongoing conversation, and I think that's the beauty of our yoga practice. And so again, as teachers then, because I just, believe me, I know I can always hear some people as I'm saying this stuff being like, well, what am I going to teach then? That's too nebulous. Like, okay, well then if I don't even know my own body that well to know, is like, today a day I can push or not, let alone if you're somebody with like chronic pain or issues, right? That definitely disability, like that is even more fine line to know when you have capacity or not. And so if you're like, I barely know for myself, how will I teach a class where I'm doing this? I think as a teacher, in my opinion, it's naming all of that without being super verbose, because that might be a lot, but naming it in the sense of like, right? So let's go back to the balance. Okay, we're not just balancing because tree pose is a yoga pose, therefore we do this as part of yoga. For me, it's like framing, hey, everybody, we're doing this tree pose. Here's your cues. And then I see people falling over. Okay, so then on the next side, and I can see not just people falling over, but I see people like really furrowing their brows, the jaws clenched. They're like really doing the balance, but struggling with it. Then we stop and we go on the other side. And then I'm like, hey, do this tree pose like it didn't matter. Do this tree pose like you were 3 years old. And I didn't have to go into a whole long explanation like we're doing here in this episode. I could say the right sentence that immediately conveys the same meaning. And time again, anytime I kind of do that, you see people will just go, oh yeah, right. I was really approaching this like it was like life or death, or right. A 3-year-old wouldn't give a crap and just be like, wee, look, I'm on one leg. And it's palpable and so clear to see that change. So that's what I mean when we try to be nervous system forward like that as teachers, where, okay, cool. And then what's my why? Now I do want to challenge people's capacity. So what we're going to do is hold a warrior series, let's say, or a warrior lunge. So I'm just thinking anything that's going to get those quads burning. And then have that be like, okay, if this feels like, we know, like, use what Ula said, the science behind that. Your brain wants to tell you that this is like, there's your nervous system, homeostasis, right? So your brain wants to tell you like, no, don't put that extra effort in. Don't expend that effort. Knowing that it's like, actually, I can expend that effort. / always as the teacher being like, and if today's not the day you want to push that capacity, come out of it whenever you need, right? So we're always we're framing it for people, the why, and we're reinforcing options. So we're educating, hey, this is why we're doing this thing, and now because I've given you the education on it, you get to choose, is this what I want today?
So things I'm hearing is like creating safe spaces, playing with capacity, helping students learn to, I guess, pick up what their own nervous system is saying, rather than just, you give a posture and you're like, you better stay in that warrior one no matter, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
because your brain's tricking you, but really, right.
Your brain's lying, and there's some poor person who didn't sleep last night, right? So giving that permission do you think there's anything else, just to wrap it up, I guess, a misunderstanding that you commonly see, misunderstanding in classes or in teachers, or maybe just out in the universe right now, about the nervous system, and maybe like one really good takeaway a teacher can have based on that misunderstanding that you're commonly seeing?
I think it's everything we've talked about for sure. That sense of like nervous system isn't just lying around and doing stress release stuff. It's great and do all that if that feels right, right? But honestly, at the bare, like we do not give enough credit to feeling seen and supported and cared for. So as a yoga teacher, because as we said at the beginning, you know, we're like we've got somebody in a class where they're like, I don't like this breathing. Somebody else beside them's like, I love it, and everybody in between. You can't control that. That's really hard as a teacher, and then that puts a lot of pressure on your shoulders. But if the container that you're teaching in is giving people a sense of like feeling seen and supported as they are, you're not trying to create anything where they're having to change who they are in order to belong in the class, like that is nervous system supportive. And I always think about think about your favorite people in your life. Who are the people that you get warm feelings about? So if you think about your favorite person, and I'm pausing because I hope we're like doing this together as a live action moment. And like, what does that feel like in your body when you think of them? Like I feel like a warm little fire in my chest, like a nice little campfire. Like it's like a warmth happens. And then we go, well, why do we feel that from that person or those people? Hopefully we have more than one person that makes us feel that way. And I'm going to guess most of it is because you're in a relationship with somebody in whatever capacity where you get to be yourself. That makes me feel warm and happy, right? Think of somebody where you don't have that experience. Whew, yeah, like I'm sure we have a million people in our lives over the course of our lives where we're like, oh, I don't feel super comfortable. It's not that warm, glowy feeling. So, and it's because you're having to change a little bit or they're projecting stuff or whatever, right? People are people. We're all funny and human dynamics. But I think if we can do our best as teachers and we won't have it, like, it's hard. Like I'm pausing a little bit because it's kind of funny because I'm like, as best as we can in our capacity at any given time as a teacher, if we're creating those spaces where people are welcomed and supported and they can get that little bit of a warm glow feeling, hooray, that might still not happen because you might not sure as much as like you're being supportive and wonderful teacher, you just might not be the teacher for that person. So just I don't know if I'm really like, Ula, am I saying this in a concise way? I guess my point is trying to get out. Yes, the nervous system. Yes, all the things, because we didn't even talk about like nervous system capacity in terms of mobility and flexibility and increasing range of motion in that way. But blah, blah. We have
that's another episode. Let us know if you want us to talk about that. I'm like, yes, that's a whole other can of worms.
That is a whole, literally.
I feel like we could keep talking about the nervous system for 100 episodes. We've actually done one other nervous system episode. So if you're curious about the nervous system, we do have a nervous system 101. If you want a great refresher as a teacher, please go to that. If you want to hear more about the nervous system, definitely let us know in the comments. And Brea, we are going to be launching a lab this year for teachers, a 3-part series. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? I know the first topic is going to be the nervous system.
Yeah, and it's just covering more of like what we're talking about here, but then in ways that I think of it like the director's cut style, where we'll look at some of my recorded classes and first you'll go do it yourself so that you can feel it in your body. Because first and foremost, as teachers, we need to feel all these concepts in our bodies in so many different ways. We can intellectualize it while we're listening to this, but then feeling it in the body is the key. And then we go back into it and I do a director's cut version, you know, and you go watch movies and they have that director's cut where the director's like, yes, and then I did this and the actors are talking. It's kind of like that. And we put some of the learning and reasoning behind it so that it's not just abstract. All of our stuff is always just like, okay, great. Out of the head, into the body or into the heart and bones.
Oh. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to make that available because we've talked in the past about being inspired by going to another teacher's class. And I think this is kind of that, but next level. It's like giving people inside info into your brain, into like why you made choices. It's one thing to go to a class and be like, oh, that's like a really nice sequence. And another one to be like, I made a decision because of the nervous system in this, place. So to me, that's truly like a learning opportunity. So we will provide links, I guess, eventually in the description. But that is coming live. That is going to be coming really hot and really soon based on the release on this episode. So anything you wanted to add to the nervous system?
Well, again, if you've made it this far, leave some comments. We've been enjoying when you comment. So if this is an exciting model, this is something we haven't done before in terms of our different offerings that we share with all of our fabulous teachers community. So if this sounds like a cool model of like director's cut teaching, or if there's something else, please let us know. We love the community feedback. But ultimately, safe, supported, lovely classes. Be your warm, beautiful, wonderful self and trust that. That is better than trying to get somebody to do perfect alignment.
Hear, hear. All right. Thanks, Brea.
Thanks, Ula.